Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and my law firm assists physicians with employment contract issues. When I am reviewing a contract for a physician, many times they'll bring up, okay, well, what are industry standard numbers, and then how do we find them out? One tool that I think is very helpful is the MGMA Physician Compensation data. And kind of go through, what it includes and how I use it. So first, the MGMA is the Medical Group Management Association. It's an association for professionals that manage and/or assist with physician practices. And then each year they will do a survey of physicians by specialty, which gathers a lot of information about kind of how they're compensated. And so what goes into the numbers? Well, first they'll do total compensation. So what's like an average salary for a physician in a specialty? RVUs. So what are the total RVUs generated in that specialty? And then what's the average compensation factor? And I'll kind of get into the specifics of that in a second. And then lastly, what are the average net collections for a physician in that specialty as well? And I'll kind of break down each one and then how I use it. So if a physician is given a contract that just has a base salary, no productivity at all, then it's helpful to kind of look into the MGMA numbers and see, well, what's a kind of normal amount for a physician in that specialty in that area. And so the MGMA numbers are broken down by region. So you have Eastern, Midwest, Southern, Western. It's also broken down into a physician-owned practice versus a hospital/healthcare network as well, because those numbers can fluctuate fairly dramatically. And so once we kind of get into those numbers and see what the average is, it's a helpful tool. Should it be the only thing relied upon? Absolutely not. I think it's a terrible idea for a physician to base whether a job is worth pursuing or not just based upon compensation. You have a number of other factors. What are the benefits? What's the non-compete like? Is it easy to get in, out of the contract if things go south? What's the non-solicit? Do they pay tail insurance? Like, it's not just compensation. It's kind of the totality of things. But certainly the compensation is kind of the wow factor numbers, and it's probably the first thing that a physician thinks about in determining whether a job is good or not. So getting back to, if they just have a base offer, we can look at those numbers and see if it's industry standard. I would also suggest for any physician, talk to your colleagues, see what offers they're getting, especially for people in residency. Comparing offers is really I think the almost best way of utilizing whether an offer that you're getting is fair or not. So next, let's talk about collections. So if a physician is given a contract that's just based upon net collections, what that means is every dollar that the practice receives, the physician gets a percentage of. So usually somewhere between 35 to 45%. So in this case, let's just say someone has a 40% net collections. Each month that whatever they collect, they get 40% of that, and it's pretty simple. So how the MGMA data is helpful is knowing what are the average collections annually for a specific specialty. And that way, the physician can at least kind of forecast what they're going to make. Now, obviously, it's volume dependent upon the practice, how efficient they are in billing and collecting. But having these numbers certainly is like a good base point. Another way of being compensated is via RVUs. So just talking about the collections real quick. So I find that physician practices utilize net collections based models, and then hospitals use RVUs. It would be very rare that you'd see a private physician-owned practice to use RVUs. And then alternatively, it also would be very rare to have a hospital use net collections. Just doesn't happen very often. So in this case, if they have an RVU contract, I mean, there's different hybrid models, but let's just say it's straight RVUs. You just take the RVUs generated by the physician, multiply it by a compensation factor, and that's what they make. So it's helpful to know, all right, well, what are the average RVUs generated per year in your specialty, in your area? And then what's the average compensation factor? And as I said before, the compensation factor is just the dollar value, and it varies by specialties, usually between $35 to $65. And you just multiply that number times the RVUs generated, and that's how much you make. Sometimes in contracts, we can negotiate both the RVU thresholds and the compensation factor number as well. Many places will kind of tier. So they'll say, all right, if you generate anything between 5 to 6,000 RVUs generated, you'll get $50. And then anything from 6 to 7, you get $10 above that or $5 above that. That's a normal way of doing it. So that's why this data is so helpful. Now, downsides, in some specialties, the sample size is so low that it can't really be relied upon or isn't statistically significant. When you get into like the real subspecialties that took 3-year fellowships to get into, and there just aren't that many of them out in the country, it's just difficult to have a lot of people respond to the survey, and therefore some of the numbers provided I don't think can be completely relied upon. It's a great tool. Is it the only tool? No, there are other places that have. Merritt Hawkins is another one that provides data. Another question I get regularly is, how can I see this data? And well, it's tough. So there may be online some MGMA data that's old that you can find just Googling around, but it would be virtually impossible to find the most current MGMA data online for free. I mean, we have to pay for it every year. But if just Google around for median compensation and try to find some numbers, but I think this is probably the most accurate numbers that we can get. But like I said, they're not the only numbers. So hopefully that was like kind of a real brief rundown of what is the MGMA physician compensation data, and then kind of how it can assist in negotiating contract. If you have any questions, you can always call my office at the phone number listed below in the description, or you can reach us online at ChelleLaw.com. That's CHELLE law.com. Once again, my name is Robert Chelle, and hopefully that was helpful. Thanks.